All right, now we're on. Now we're live.
Excellent. All right. Got our minute before we go live. Barrington Nelson. Now I can see his smiling face. What's up, brother? What's up? Yeah. Anybody who's joined, if you're not on video, it helps us a lot if you'll join in video. Also what we do is when we go to questions and answers, if we have a question, we might call on you awkwardly because you don't have your camera on. So if you could turn your camera on, that would help everybody in the room and help everybody on the call, and actually help Brett, our special guest, just kind of, get a feel for the face and all that. So anybody join on, that's great. Dan Callahan, welcome. So there we go. A couple people turn on the cameras. That's great. Yeah. So helps a lot, make it a lot more interactive. If you gotta go do something, hey, go do something. If you want to, black out your camera, then that's okay. I've seen we've probably all seen Zoom calls where somebody's on a Zoom and they proceed to go into the bathroom and didn't realize their video was on. So I don't know if you
Oh,
haven't seen that
dude,
video, you can just YouTube it. Yeah, yeah.
during the pandemic, that guy who was in the bathroom, like butt naked.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, it was terrible. Oh my God.
So
Uh,
so yeah, that's what we have to
Andy,
wonder.
what
So
kind
anybody
of
that's
guests
not
are
on
you having on
video,
your show, man? Come on.
Seriously, it was nuts. It was during the pandemic, and Susan like texted me, and she's like, somebody's camera's on, and he's naked." Like, what?
But
so so if your video is not turned on, we're sitting here wondering what you're really doing. So but yeah, glad to see everybody join today. We're gonna get this kicked off. I'm Scott Spear. I born and raised Rochester boy, built a good real estate market there, or a good real estate portfolio while I was there, and proceeded to start selling it off in 2018, 19, and 20 to move over to self-storage. But more importantly than that, my wife and I had a goal for a lot of years to hop in an RV and live full time. And believe it or not, it's been almost 3.5 years since we've done that, since we left Rochester. We travel all over the country, just happen to be in Florida right now. I tell people we go where we want, when we want, for as long as we want. But you're right now, you're with FRIA, with Freedom First Real Estate Investors Association. It's part of a national group. And the cool thing about this, if you're a paid FRIA member, and if you travel, if you go to other places, most cities have a RIA group, and you can actually go visit that group for free. They don't charge you. And so me traveling around, if I'm at a place for a little while, I'll look up, see what's going on with the local RIA, and stop in and see them. So it's worked out very well, very advantageous for myself and growing my business. But that's free. And not full disclosure, but little disclosure statement that you clicked on before you came on. We're here just to offer help. We're not offering legal advice. We're not offering financial advice. If we say anything, it's because it was a good fit for us. It may not fit what you're going through right now. So if you're going to do some of the things that we talked about, you really should seek the advice of an attorney or a CPA just to see if it works for you. That's kind of the mini disclosure. We are the Dealmasters group. We're a subgroup of FRIA. What we do is we jump on, we talk about how to structure deals, how to make deals, commercial, residential. We don't talk too much about tenants and toilets, landlording. We just don't talk about it. There's a whole nother group that talks about that. I think they meet and they have all that plungers in their hands, toilet plungers, and that's a landlord meeting. And after doing that for a number of years, it was very good for me. I really never want to go back to that. So that's what the Deal Masters group is. And today we're lucky enough to have my good friend Brett Iwanowicz here. Brett, how long have we known each other now?
a long time, man. A long
Long
time.
time.
I can't keep track of time. You probably know better than I do.
I
Yeah.
still remember when Brett
Who's-
and Chris Michaels spoke in front of Freya when I was still at Home Depot at Rick's Prime Rib forever ago. And you're talking 7, 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember meeting him at the Bayfront restaurant when we used to have our meetings there.
Oh, yeah.
And he was still managing properties for other people. I still
No,
remember that
dude.
conversation. You're like, you know, it's time for me now. I'm making all these other people rich. And I remember that conversation, Brett.
That's awesome, man. Well, I can tell you guys, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but Scott and Joe were two big influencers getting started. Scott actually, I still remember to the day, inviting him over to my house.
Yep.
Joe actually helped me put my first assignment contract together at the property. He sat down with me line by line, went through the contract with me. So that's what this group is all about, is just connecting with people that can take you to where you want to go. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
We
We appreciate you
being on
too.
the call.
Yeah. And Brett's been a tremendous help to me too. Yeah, he might be newer than me. Yeah, I think when Brett and I first met, I didn't have gray hair, and now I do. And I know Brett didn't have gray hair, so
No, I
that's how long
didn't.
we've known each other. And yeah, yeah, it was that I remember going to Brett's house, meeting him in his kitchen dining room area, and we just sat down and kind of came up with a little plan for him. And man, he just followed through. He took a hold and really took action. And that's what this is. It's really just taking action, doing what you need to do to get to where you want. And Brett just took a hold of it. And hey, we've all had some struggles along the way. I have too. And that's what it's just about. You just keep persevering and you just keep pressing through. You have no choice. It's life. And Brett really exemplifies that. Brett and I are part of a mastermind group too.
Yeah.
It's called the Ascend Mastermind Group. It's for like high level, high achieving people that are doing business. Could be real estate, it could be a jazzercise business, it could be a coaching business. And that's run by a guy we had on a little bit ago, Steve Kavanaugh and Alex Pardo. And that's been very beneficial for me. I've seeked out help, and then I think I was in just before Brett, and then Brett came on board, and it's just been a great journey. And Brett's helped me out with a lot of personal things, a lot of business things, and it's just been great. It's great to have somebody you can pick up the call or pick up the phone and call and just get things done. And that's what this group is all about, helping each other. And I'm real glad to have Brett on board with us. And what I'm going to do an intro on Brett, but before we do that, does anybody, Andy or Joe, you have any announcements that you want to make on anything or anything we should cover before
I know we're going to be having the next week is going to be the main meeting in person at the at Eagle Vale. That starts at 5:30. Andy, who's the speaker for next?
It's Matt. So Druin's going to be doing his how to get into commercial real estate investing without using your own money, raising capital and all that kind of stuff. So that's his one speaking event for the year that he's doing. And he'll talk a little bit about his coaching program and stuff that he's doing, but seems to be getting pretty good results for the people that are participating in it. So
perfect. And that'll be networking starts at 5:30. He'll probably start at 7. Usually try to keep it about 45 minutes to somewhere around there. And then a ton of networking. There's usually between 80 and 100 people there. And it goes till almost 10 or whenever
they kick us out is usually how it goes.
Yep. So
and then everybody goes to the bar afterwards. So
yeah. So for networking, get on the FRIA website. We do this meeting live and in person the third Thursday of the month, which is 2 Thursdays from today, but that'll be in the evening. Starts at 7. Usually get there around 6:45-ish, 6:40-ish. Do some networking. That is at Ferrari's Pizza. Go on the website, FRIA.com. It'll give you all the details. And then the following Thursday is going to be the housing providers. If you don't know anything about landlords, tenants, and toilets, that's the place to be. Carl Weeks is doing that meeting. Usually does it with Beth and Pat Gallagher. Beth and Pat right now are in Florida for about 3 or 4 months. But Beth and Pat, they manage over 700 properties, and Carl has done well north of 6,000 plus properties. It probably way more than that in the city of Rochester. So whatever it is you want to know about tenants and toilets, show up there. And that's also on the FRIA website. That's also at the Ferrari's Pizza. And that starts at 7 o'clock also. And go to the website. And then I think there's coffee club, but everything else should be on there. I think that's pretty much about it, Andy.
You got it, man. Coffee club every Tuesday. Show up, do networking. Nope, there's no agenda. Vlad runs that. And yeah, it's worth the time to get out there. Try to do one networking event for real estate a week or more if you can do it. So Freya's got that covered just with Coffee Club, but these meetings bring us to like 9 meetings a month, I think, between the it's 8 to 9 meetings a month. So there's no excuse to not be participating in something. And that doesn't even include what some of our members do as far as other meetings. So you've always got the upstate REI meetup that our secretary puts on along with Josh and Marty. You've got Tim Odell's meeting down in well, wherever he's hosting it now, down in the city. But there's a plenty of stuff to do in Rochester. There's never an excuse to not be networking.
Yeah. Perfect. I think that's it for announcements.
Good. And yeah, so by being a free member, you just go to the free website. Like Andy said, there is 8, 9 meetings a month. You don't have to attend them all. You kind of pick and choose. That's a great thing about this. And what we did was towards the end of last year, we used to just call this alternative real estate investing. Towards the end of last year, we decided to turn it into Dealmasters, talk about, like I said, how to make money in real estate other than landlording. And we decided to come up with an agenda and kind of say, okay, every month we're going to talk about a topic. What's that topic going to be? And most months it works out that we do a morning session the first Thursday of the month like this. The only Thursday we won't be doing it is Thursday, July 4th. We will not be doing a Zoom meeting then, so you can cross it off your calendar. And then I think Joe, on the third Thursday, was it March or May? We will not be having a meeting.
Yeah, because they booked that room out that we usually use for March. So for March, there will not be an evening.
Yeah, that's the March Madness insanity that they do. So yeah, we don't want to be there anyway. We'd never be able to hear anybody talk.
I think we tried that once. It was insane.
Oh no, it did not go well. We're not going to be there.
Good.
All right.
So that's it. And when I was talking about, doing a different topic every month, the month of February is about negotiating. And on the third Thursday, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe will be doing a little presentation on negotiating, and he may have somebody else come up and assist him with that too. So that's going to be in a live meeting. But this week and today, I'm happy, proud, super excited that we're able to get Brett Iwanowicz to come on and talk about negotiating. And this conversation can go just about anywhere. And we're going to talk about negotiating, like with buyers and sellers, and maybe even contractors, negotiating through life. I mean, that's what life's all about. Honestly, it's all about negotiating. The world's oldest profession they talk about, it was a negotiation. But a little bio on Brett. Some of you may know Brett, some of you don't. I'm just going to read his bio really quick. Brett's a seasoned virtual wholesaler. What that means is Brett does wholesaling in Rochester, New York, did it live for a few years. Now he's able to do it remotely, virtually. He's in Guatemala. I don't know what the weather's like right now in Rochester, but I'll tell you what, I guarantee it's a lot better in Guatemala than it is in Rochester. Maybe unless you like that weather in Rochester. So he's a virtual wholesaler. So I wanted to explain what that was. With a passion for transforming lives through sales strategies and investment insights. He's based between the scenic locales of Rochester, New York, and Guatemala. He brings a unique blend of experience to the table with over 15 years in real estate industry, with 4 of those years dedicated specifically to wholesaling. He's witnessed firsthand the transformative power of sales and reshaping financial destinies. Sales isn't just a profession for him, it's been a life-changing journey. By immersing himself in the intensive masterminds and sales trainings, we talked about that, he's unlocked the secrets to exponential growth. Now get this, in 2023 alone, his team grossed over $830,000. A testament to the unwavering commitment to excellence. And with where he's at right now in 2024, reasonably confident. And I had a great conversation with him at our Ascend Mastermind last week. I'm reasonably confident he is going to exceed $1 million. The journey ahead promises even greater milestones and achievement. Today, we're going to talk about deep dive into strategies, tactics, and mindset shifts essential for wholesaling success. Whether you're a seasoned investor like Mr. Joe Lavabera, seeking to amplify your returns because we all learn from each other, or a newcomer. I see some new people on here, and I'm super glad you guys are on here. You're in the right place at the right time. Eager to navigate the real estate landscape, you'll find invaluable insights, actionable advice tailored to your journey. And with that, thank you very much for joining us, Brett. Everything you said on there is true. Like I said, it's been a great journey. I'm really, really super glad that Brett's able to take the time and join us today. So, Brett, on that, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. So the one thing that I would love to share with you guys getting started is the money part of this. One thing well, this is why these groups are so important. These masterminds are so important. We had a mastermind, Scott mentioned, that we were at the past week, and I was talking to my coach, and we were going through our numbers, and I was really frustrated because as a business owner now, I'm managing people, learning how to be a leader, creating processes, and hiring people, and we had to separate the business goals from my personal goals. And my personal goals doesn't really require me to make a lot of money. It might be a lot of money to some of you, but the money aspect, I don't know. I think it's important to pay attention to that because sometimes it can be the driving force behind a business. And it's really important to understand your personal goals and your business goals, because there's things that I've been frustrated about that I want to fix that I really don't need to fix, because even if I don't do $1 million, I'm still meeting my personal income goals. And so that's something that I didn't even connect. And so instead of being frustrated over why things aren't working like I want them to work, like they don't have to work like I want them to work, because I'm hitting my goals even if I don't hit that $1 million. So I just thought that was something important to share, because part of Ascend talks about, and Joe and Scott, you're familiar with this, and Brennan, you are too, like putting together a vision for your life and then building your business around your life. And sometimes those aren't always going the same direction, but it's good to have people around you to help you stay the course and not be distracted by the money's good, but it's not what I can tell you. Making that $1 million isn't going to make me any happier. It's making me a lot more stressed, I can tell you that. And sometimes I have considered just scaling back significantly and going back to something simple, because at the end of the day, peace of mind is more important than hitting a certain KPI. So I wanted to lead in with that, but I think something. So I've been recently working on all my sales processes. This is really cool. So a lot of this information is incredibly fresh in my mind, and so we can do a number of things. I can open this up to Q&A. I can share with you some of the game-changing, I guess, mindset hacks that I've learned. I actually have one of my KPI trackers in front of me, and I think the one thing that I want to stress with you guys is sales is easy. You might be like, "Well, you're crazy, Brad. Like, if I'm making these crazy little offers to sellers that are kicking me out of their living room." Sales is nothing more than following a process. That's it. It's a process. You might suck at that process, but if you have a process that works for somebody else, it's going to work for you. And so the biggest investment that I made was paying for a sales program. I have absolutely no sales experience, and I'm going to tell you why this is so important. I moved to Guatemala in 2000, I don't know, like the end, I can't even remember, the end of 2021, I think in November. I had 2 new VAs that I brought in-house. I was training them and creating my SOPs, standard operating procedures, with them. I had gone from negotiating in the living room to negotiating over the phone, which is incredibly difficult and different. A lot different, because you can't have difficult conversations over the phone because people just hang up on you. So it's really hard to work through objections. You can't really dive as deep as you want on objections. So this is what a process did for me. I did 48 contracts. I closed 36 out of those 48 contracts, which is a 75% closing rate. On average, a wholesaling company is 50% or less. This is my first year going from in the living room. And this is only me talking to sellers, maybe 2 to 3 hours a day, because I'm running the business, doing the marketing, literally doing everything, training people, dealing with problems. For every appointment, for every 2 appointments, appointment for me is I would send someone out to the property. So for every 2 appointments resulted in a contract. I guarantee go out and try to find someone else who is able to do that. And I guarantee you're gonna have a hard time. And that's not for me. That's not me being prideful. That's me telling you, I was calling people every week, dude, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing. They're just like, follow the process, Brett. Follow the process, trust the process. Sometimes I was always questioning myself. And for every offer it only took me 2 offers to get a contract. So I just shared that with you. So that closing rate is almost unheard of in the wholesaling business. And that is just from following somebody else's process. So I had absolutely no confidence in myself doing this, but I had confidence in this other process because I know it worked for all these other people. And it was something that I trust. I don't know if you guys heard of John Martinez or the REI Sales Academy. Jerry Green now has since taken it over. But that's what I invested in. It was $10,000. I interviewed John Martinez on my podcast, and I told him live I would have paid a lot more for that coaching program. Otherwise, I would not have been able to have these results. And that year, solo, we grossed $362,000. And that's that's like almost just going into year 2 and just focusing on wholesaling. So no sales experience ever in my life, no marketing experience ever in my life. So I source all my own data. I don't pay for data companies. So I had to learn this. I've learned everything from scratch. And but what I did was I invested in myself and I pay for coaching and mentorship. So I just trusted what everyone else is doing that was working. And sometimes not everything is going to be the same in your market. And I just did what I found people who had similar businesses and I just copied exactly what they were doing. So I thought that was just something interesting to share. Does anyone have any comments on that or want to kind of dive deeper and maybe into what those processes look like or anything like that?
I have a quick question. You said the word KPIs. For some of the newer people on here, they may not know what that is. Can you explain what that is?
KPIs are your key performing indexes. They're going to be a little bit different. So just to give an example, like I track gross leads, which is the total amount of leads that come into the business. Active leads are people that we think we can do business with, and we track our appointments to offers to contracts, how many gross leads it takes to get to a contract, how many gross leads it takes to get to a closing, appointments to contracts, gross leads to appointments, offer to contract, things like that. So you want to, and this was the huge look, this made me want to throw up. This is there's a book called, what's it called? It talks about, oh my gosh, personality isn't permanent. And in that book, this guy talked about math trauma. And it's really crazy because like in school, math was the one subject that stole like all of my confidence. Do you have it? Andy, what book is that?
This is just a KPI book written by Bernie Marr. But it's
awesome.
Literally it's just general for any business. But this is one that I've had for about a decade and I still go back to.
Yeah.
So because there's always ideas.
And like I said, I am not a numbers person. In fact, like I basically asked somebody, hey man, I need you to come into my business and take a look. Cause I really had before I moved to Guatemala, I knew what I had was something, it was working, but I really had no idea if it was good or bad. Like I knew it was good, but I didn't know how good. I didn't know how. So basically I asked one of our guys from Ascend to come in and audit my business. And he coached me through understanding these KPIs. And these KPIs are basically your blueprint for understanding, am I wasting my money here? Should I invest more here? You know, if your conversions are bad, it's telling you that it's a litmus test for the health of your company, basically. And so I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in those 15 years of real estate, and the reason why the last 4 have been so successful, is because the last 4 I stopped treating real estate like a hobby and started treating it like a business. And a business has systems. It has trackable systems. So, and sales is nothing more than a system that you can track. It's a process. You can track if it works, if it doesn't work. You can track different intros. So that's the only way to determine whether or not what you're doing is, we'll just say, good or bad, the litmus test of that business. So no shooting from the hip. It's like having a vision for your company. You're following the specific blueprint, and you should, if you're following that process, see the results that you want to get out of those processes.
Well, I appreciate
Right.
you answering that question. And yeah, I know you're going to talk more about it, and I definitely look forward to hearing how you negotiate over the phone. You know, Joe is a lot of face to face because he's in Rochester, and like I said, Joe will be presenting in 2 weeks. But you do a lot of it over the phone, and I know you'll get to that, and I look forward to that too. So go
Okay.
ahead, Joe. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's actually I was going to ask that question. My question was, how was it going from negotiating face to face and then versus all of a sudden doing it over the phone? Because obviously on the phone it's different. They buy you first, what you have to offer second, it's your voice. So was it, did you have a tough time transitioning, or what did you have to do, or how was it going from face to face to doing it over the phone?
So I think the biggest difference is, and it's actually interesting because I kind of wish that as part of me wants to start going back in the living room again, and test my theory, because negotiating over the phone has honed my sales skills incredibly. So the differentiation is understanding that yes isn't always a yes, and a no is a conversation to get to a yes. So when you're in person, I would have no problem going out to a property and not being clear on a yes being yes and a no being a no. Meaning, so I'll give you an example. There's 3 types of yeses. There's counterfeit yes, this is what I've been working at. Counterfeit yes is a yes, in which counterpart plans on saying no, but feels that saying yes is the easier route. Confirmation yes. Confirmation yes is generally innocent. It's a reflexive response to black or white questions. It is sometimes used to lay a trap, but mostly it's simple affirmation without any promise of action. A commitment yes. A commitment yes is the real deal. It's a true agreement that leads to action. So when you're negotiating over the phone, you have to make sure 100% without a doubt that you're getting a commitment yes. Because if you're not, and I send out that contract and I don't have that commitment yes, I'm not getting that contract. So it requires a lot more time up front and a lot longer conversations with sellers, going over condition, timeline, motivation, price, deal killers. A good salesperson will take a question 3 levels deep. So how does that make you feel? What do you think about that? What would change if we did this? So it's really, I got to tell you, the mindset shift is not what I'm getting out of this conversation, because if I make it about what I'm getting in this conversation, I'm not focusing on solving that seller's problems. So really it's intently listening. And so if there was, this is kind of one of my, I have like a real estate sales Bible. So this is something you guys should write down. I follow what's called the 80% rule. 80% of the time you're listening, and 20% of the time when you're talking, you're only asking questions. And so if I have another saying, telling isn't selling. So if you're telling someone what you can do for them, how good you are, that doesn't work. That is, you're going to go into a negotiation and it's not going to go how you want. There's the best sales approach is called the consultative approach, in which you're working to provide a solution. And if you can provide a solution to each seller's specific situation, then you have an opportunity to make money. So we only make money by solving people's problems. And you can only solve people's problems if you're asking the right questions. And so that's a huge part of our sales process. Our script is also like psychologically based to just ask questions and position us to put our best foot forward with an offer, which the best offer isn't always the highest price.
By the way, people have questions for Brett. This is meant to be interactive. So
Can you you've done that a bunch, Brett, where I know that you've gotten deals locked up where you weren't the best number. Could you talk about what you think sets you apart from people who are paying 10, 20 grand more, but sellers are still willing to go with you?
Yeah, I'll give you guys an example. There's a property that I had signed in Fairport. And originally a seller wanted like 220K for this property, and I'm pretty sure we put it under contract for like 140. I think it was like 140 or 130. And when on the initial call, we didn't seem to be a good fit. But the way we set up the end of our calls, it's a no pressure sale, which instead of saying, I don't think we're a good fit, or like, we'll follow up with you, we, at the end of the call, we say, hey, now that we've gone through all these, I'm just kind of really paraphrasing here to make shorten this up, but we tell a seller who we are. We're at the end of the call, hey, we shared, do you understand who we are and what we do? And if you don't, we'll tell them. And at the end of the call, they know we're investors. They know we need to buy properties at a discount. We know we flip. They know we assign properties. They know all these things about our company. Then we just ask them, hey, where do you think we should go from here? And so the whole conversation with the seller, we're controlling that conversation, but we're making the seller feel like they're controlling the conversation. What would you like to do from here? Do you understand what I mean? What do you think about this? So that's what active listening is. And that's how you build rapport, is by really listening to sellers. So sellers appreciate the fact that you're actually asking them questions instead of telling them maybe what they want or don't want to hear. If I told the seller, well, hey, I don't think your home is worth $220,000, that's going to piss the seller off. You can say the same thing differently or not at all. And that's kind of one of the things that we can talk about, is like the biggest disruptor in the sales process is price. So like, I completely ignore price, because price, if you start trading facts, doesn't work. So I don't trade facts with sellers. I just completely ignore price, and ultimately just ask the seller what they want to do, and they don't feel pressured. And in that instance, the guy, we think we had 2 or 3 more conversations after that. We finally came to an agreement, and we're able to put that one under contract.
So, Brett, compared to how, because I want also people to see what you used to do. How did you used to handle it when you weren't getting the results that you wanted from compared to now? I want people to at least have some type of comparison, because obviously there's some new people here, and and you're giving great information. Also,
yeah,
I like to at least be able to see how you'd handle it in the first place versus how you handle talking to somebody now.
So I always have accountability people. So if there is a specific problem that I have, I will call someone and say, hey, I have this problem. I need you to hold me accountable. The biggest problem that I had getting started was letting price intimidate me. Because you're like, why? This seller is telling me they want 200K for this home. I can only pay 50. Like, why would I ever waste my time to go out and see that property? Like, and that is, I'm going to say that's probably what like over 90% of real estate investors do, is they disqualify based on price. And that is a huge no. I don't even care about price. So this is something else you guys want to write down. So if you guys heard of Brent Daniels, he has a good roadmap for qualifying sellers, and he calls them the four pillars. So you have and open up my script too. Condition, timeline, motivation, and price. I don't care about price, especially considering that if they want to sell in 30 to 90 days, that tells me they want to sell. If the property needs work, and if there's some motivation, I don't care if they tell me they want $1 million for the property. I know that they're going to be willing to sell their house at a discount. And so the reason I know that is because even if they tell me, because one of the questions I ask on price, are you flexible? Even if they tell me no, the end of my script before I close on an appointment, I'm telling them we need to buy your home at a discount. I'm telling them who we are and what we do at the end of the call. So I'm making it clear that we have to buy their home at a discount. And most of the time they say yes. So they've already told me no, they're not willing to be flexible, but at the end of the call, I'm telling them we need to buy it at a discount, but they're not telling me yes directly, it's indirectly. They're telling me yes by wanting us to come out and see their property. And that's probably the most important part of that process is like working on that and having some type of accountability partner, and just understanding when things don't work, they only work because you're in your own way. And every time things weren't working for me, it's because I wasn't following my process. I would go off script.
Okay. I know we got some shy people on here right now. I don't know why. Scott's going to start calling on people, see, because at least we want to be able to at least, if some of you, if you've had issues with some of your negotiating, or maybe you were going after a deal and you end up having something that bad happen between you and the seller, we could also dissect that a little bit too. So don't be afraid to, put it out there.
Well, I can tell you guys, like the best method for any type of negotiating is 100% full transparency and honesty. Like if you try to pull one over a seller, that's just a recipe for disaster. Like when our contracts state we can buy your home, we can flip it, we can assign it, we can do whatever we want with it. And then we tell a seller, hey, do you understand this? And are you okay with that? And if you're not, then we're probably not the best fit for you. So like full transparency on who you are, what you do, how you can help, who's bringing the money. Like now, it's a blessing that I can show personal proof of funds, but I'll tell sellers, hey, we don't have $1 million. Like the only way we're able to buy everyone's property is by using other people's money. Does that make you uncomfortable? Is that okay with you? And most of the time people don't care. And if they do, then you can easily fix that problem by asking, like, hey, why does that make you uneasy? Well, you don't have the money. Okay, well, what if we have a call with my partner? We can do a Zoom call and we can show you personal proof of funds that can help solve that problem. So there's always a solution to a problem. You just have to be willing to have that uncomfortable conversation and ask, what you need to do to solve that problem.
How rigid are you with your script?
I have it open on my, so this might sound crazy, but I have it open on my computer whenever I talk to somebody.
Is it more of like an outline, and then you're fielding the emotional, just you actually connecting with the seller?
Yeah, the only thing that takes somewhat of a learning curve is like initially. So what I would suggest, if you have some type of script, there's a call outline that you follow A to Z, like straight A to Z, like get the feel for it, like just be comfortable being able to get through A to Z and pretend like you're working for somebody else. And that's how I was able to do this. I put myself in the mindset like, hey, if I was working for somebody, they'd probably fire me if I wasn't doing my job. My job is to ask these questions. And so that's kind of how, especially when this, Joe mentioned, like, what would you do when things were going wrong? I'd go back to that mindset, would say, well, hey, if I was being audited by my boss, they'd probably fire me because I'm not doing my job. And so Getting through that whole script first, that's like stage one. Stage two is kind of like understanding the flow of a conversation. So just because you have a script that's spelled out a certain way, that doesn't mean you can start the conversation on a different topic within that script. So I'll give you an example. Like I always set the stage the same, but the seller might start off with motivation. And on my script, it starts off with price. So you just want to make sure you're collecting condition, timeline, motivation, and price. But my script always starts with setting the stage and always ends with setting the stage with a clear action of what happens next. And if it's not a yes, it's a no. So if it's a no, you ask, well, what would you like to do from here? Or what did we do wrong? So you always want to make sure if you're qualifying someone, and this is the hardest part in sales, if it's not a yes, it's a no. But then you have to understand, like, a no might be because you did something wrong on that call. So you really have to make sure, and that is what this script is for. So if I go through this script and I get condition that it needs work, motivation that somebody died and they can't afford it, but at the end of the call, they don't want an appointment, I have to ask them, hey, is it me, the price, or the process? Did I miss something here? Like, what's going on? It sounds like we're a good fit to help you out. And it could be they're embarrassed. It could be the home is too disastrous. They don't want anybody in there. So like we need to make sure that we're very sensitive to those things. And that's why I like to put the ball in their court, because like, I know I can do business with this person at the end of that call. I know they're going to want to sell to me. I know they might not want an appointment now. And we just simply say, hey, well, what would you like to do next? And that conversation helps put you in the right direction without making the seller feel pressured and uncomfortable. And so that's why it's incredibly important to stick to a script, because if you go off script, then you can say something that might offend somebody or make them feel pressured.
There's a couple questions in the chat box too.
Yeah, with the questions in the chat box, actually, one of them who I know is shy. I'm going to make her come on live and talk. So, Caitlin, I see your question in here. And Caitlin is becoming a really good negotiator. Caitlin has a couple deals in process right now, and she's doing really good. So, but go ahead, Caitlin. What was your question for Brett?
I've actually got a couple questions, Brett. First one is, how do you navigate a seller that doesn't want to disclose their price? They want you to make the first move.
So rule of thumb is giving price too soon gives up all your leverage. So just remember that. So it goes both ways. So a seller might know that, we know that, since we're trying to negotiate a sale, you can navigate that a couple ways. Typically I tell a seller, like, hey, Mr. Seller, this is our process. We're real cash buyers. We don't shoot from the hip. We're not going to guesstimate what we can pay for your home without seeing. Does that make sense to you? And I'm asking a question. Does that make sense to you? Well, of course, Brett, but you're the professional, tell me, you should be able to tell me what your home is worth. I say, well, what if I gave you a price, you have me come out to your house, and I can't pay that? What did you just turn me into? A liar. I'm not a liar. Like, I can't do that. So I just go back to my process and say, hey, our process is, if you would like to sell your property, our offers are based on visual inspections of the property. When we come out to your home, we're prepared to make you an offer that day. That doesn't mean you need to take that offer, but we're going to put our passport forward. We don't need to talk to a financing department. We don't need to talk to Joe Schmo about what we need to do. When we come to your home, we're ready to buy it that day. So don't be caught off guard if we're gonna make an offer. So like, that's our process. So we don't see properties unless that person is ready to sell us. Because again, giving up price too soon, we're giving up all our leverage, because they can just take that price and shop it out to everybody else and try to get a better deal. And so we want to make sure that when we're negotiating, and I'll get back to your question in a second. I'm trying to dive a little bit deeper on this, but you want to be very careful. If it's not a yes, it's a no. And you can call a negotiation a no, because if you give up that price, you're losing your leverage. And that's the process that you have to trust, because it's really hard to tell somebody, no, I don't think it's the right time at the dinner table. But what that does is, if you've read, and Andy, I saw this book, on your bookshelves, never split the difference. And no is the beginning of a negotiation. So a lot of salespeople push for the no first. And so if you get a no, then you can ask, well, hey, now this is over. What do you want to do? What are you going to do from here? And like, that's when the real conversation might begin. So, and you can pick up on things that you missed. If a seller really wants a price, what I'll say is like, hey, look at, I've shared our process with you. I think you understand that I can't put my best foot forward. And then it's like, hey, don't you want the most amount of money for your home? Well, of course I do, Brett. Well, how can I do that if I can't come and see it? Because if I'm shooting from the hip, my offer is going to be low because I can't tell you how many properties that I've seen where sellers have told me they're moving ready when they need 100K in work. But if they're really hesitant on wanting a price, I say, hey, Mr. Seller, like, look, I know you want me to throw you a number. Take this with a grain of salt. I could pay more. I could pay less. Worst case scenario, I'm at 80. Best case scenario, I'm at 100. Like I said, I have no idea. I've never seen your home. And you can tell me how beautiful it is. That doesn't mean it is. I'm not calling you a liar, but I've been honest enough to know that properties aren't in the same conditions as what sellers share with us. So given that range, worst case scenario is I need to fully gut this property down to the studs and start from scratch. Best case scenario is move-in ready, meaning I need to do very little work. That's going to be and it could be a bigger range. And then I'll say, well, hey, do we fall within that range where would it make sense for us to come out and see your property? So that's how I try to mitigate that. And if they're really hesitant, then I know from there that they're probably someone we can't do business with. I had to start having that range conversation doing phone negotiations because I needed to know without a doubt, respectively, that going out to see the home in person, because I sent someone to inspect the properties, that I had a high probability to close that deal because I only get one chance to close that deal over the phone. In person, it's a little bit different. You can stay in the living room until they kick you out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is there something else that I missed on that?
I did have a second question, but you kind of already answered it. It was how you got from that example of 240 to 130, but it sounds like you're just really transparent and open in why you're giving a low ball offer. Yeah, and so that goes back to the script when we talk about price. So it's like, hey, do you know what your property is worth in the current condition? Well, no. Or they'll be like, well, Joe Schmo's home sold for this. Like, I don't care what Joe Schmo's home sold for down the street. Like, I really don't. Don't ever get into that conversation about comparing homes on Zillow over the phone. It will not get you anywhere. Ignore it. Ignore it. Completely ignore it. Then I'd say, well, hey, look at, we typically buy properties for two reasons: to renovate and resell, or we keep as rentals. Sometimes we can pay a little bit more for rentals. What do you think it would cost? And this is the key. What do you think it would cost to get that home in HGTV condition? So if the home respectively might be worth 280 or 320, and I've got to put 120 into it, how could I pay you 220? So I've got about $100,000 renovation costs. That doesn't include my closing costs, which are on the buy, which are on the sale, the commission, taxes, and so you can break down general math for them pretty easy to be like, you can say, and this is more of a living room conversation. You really don't want to have this over the phone. You can give the range over the phone, but if you're in the person and you're negotiating, you go through the math, 80% rule, walk them through it. Don't get too detailed and say, well, Mr. Seller, how can I do that? How does that make sense? Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
Hey, Brett, I have a question for you, please. Actually, a couple of questions. I'd like to know, could you, if you can, at some point, provide the link to the REI Academy that you joined, so in case we want to check it out, you know?
Yeah, I would have to. I know Gary Green took it over, so
Okay.
I might have an affiliate for that. I'll have to check, but I can definitely, someone will have to remind me, or when actually, I'll just put it in my email now. But Scott, if I have that link, where would be the best place to share that?
Andy, what would you say on that if he has that link?
You can drop it in the FRIA, the Old Coffee Club group on Facebook. That's probably the best place to put it, and everybody can just go there and find it. You can put it in the chat box for everybody in the meeting, but there's no reason not to blast it out to the masses.
Yeah, I would have to. You mean the main FRIA on Facebook group, or was there a different coffee club one?
No, that's it. That used to be the coffee club, and then
Okay,
changed
gotcha.
it when
Perfect.
Matt took over. So we
Okay.
absorbed coffee club into that when Matt took over as president.
Perfect. Did you have another question,
Yeah,
Gabriel?
yeah. So the question is, you as far as the sales and it is all about negotiation, and you're talking about you're focusing on residential properties. Well, let's
Yep.
flip the script for a minute here, and I want to go towards self-storage. How can you apply this to find when you're talking to sellers or potential sellers on the phone, as I call over the US, and a lot of them are not truly motivated because they're running a business, they're cash flowing, all that stuff. I get a ton of excuses or whatever. So I want to know if you can share some insight and how to apply this process that you've learned to not commercial, but self-storage. Commercial could mean apartment complexes and stuff like
Yep.
that. Let's talk about self-storage, please, for a second. And if you could just share some knowledge at how I can apply that, or we can apply that for us who call self-storage facility owners.
So I don't have a particular process for this, but I can tell you I've definitely have thought about it on many occasions. And for me personally, I think it's just fully transparency. Hey, I'd like to buy your facility, but why would you ever think about selling it to me? Well, I don't know. You asked me, you contacted me.
Mhm.
All right, well, so it's just asking questions. Well, hey, like in a perfect world, if you did want to sell this, why would you want to sell it and what would that look like? So to me, there's called jump in that training, it talks about like picture perfect. So what would it look like for you? Like they might not tell you about motivation up front, but you could say, hey, if you sold this, how would this change your life? Or what would this do for you? So like, if you can help paint a picture of how that can change your life, and there's a benefit to them to do that, there might not have been motivation before, but you just planted a seed. And then you can water that seed and potentially grow that seed. So for me, I'm going into those conversations not wanting to like I said, you have to go into these conversations not with something you want to get out of it. These have to be win-wins. And so you're going into that conversation with a mindset of like, how can I make this a win-win? I know that's probably very vague, but I know that for someone who's not motivated, I think I would actually be a lot more comfortable having this conversation in the industry you're talking about, because I feel like those people, they might already be in wealth building stages or beyond wealth building and already have enough wealth. So what I would want to do is position those conversations in how I can help them continue to build wealth and with reducing their workload or making it easier for them. That would be my approach. I don't know if that's helpful, but I wouldn't even be focusing on the sale. I would be focusing on how this can make their life better.
Okay. All right.
There's a raised hand too. Stephanie's got her hand up.
Can you hear me? So I have a quick question in regards to setting, excuse me, I'm also getting a cold, setting your price as a wholesaler to your buyers. Do you use a certain percentage? I kind of base everything off of location. The number of buyers I have in a certain area kind of dictates a little bit more of what my fee would be. Do you have a percentage that you like to stick with?
Yeah, I can tell you that I underwrite every property as if I would have to close on it. So me personally, I want to buy something at 50, between 40 and 50% of the ARV. So my offers are always, I'm not making offers anymore because we have somebody else doing that. But me personally, I'm underwriting them as if I had to buy them, renovate them, and resell them. And I've been in this industry long enough to know that I bought many rentals at the 80% rule, and there's probably some other people on here. I know someone in particular who did the same thing. That didn't work. So like I did everything Bigger Pockets told me to do, and it didn't work. And I sold everything because I didn't want to deal with it. But anyway, so where I'm going with that is, so as a wholesaler, I'm looking at these deals because if someone doesn't buy them, I have to. So that's the first thing I look at. But the way we typically underwrite everything is we use, it kind of depends on the area somewhat, but we'll go between 70 and 80% of the ARV minus repairs. That's it. We only put $5,000 on top of our contracts. Like we don't have huge assignment fees. And I can tell you we averaged $24,000 per assignment last year, but we only tack $5,000. So if you guys are going out and looking at our properties, think we're making all this money, we let the market dictate the value of those properties. We're only tacking on a $5,000 assignment on those. And that also helps for a number of reasons. Because when you're working with a seller and they find you marketing their property and they're like, hey, Brett, why are you selling my home for $5,000 more? You can say, well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, remember the conversation we had in the living room where we told you we bring on partners for these deals? That's exactly what we're doing. That's just our fee to bring on a partner. So if they see you're trying to assign that property for $50,000 over what you have it under contract for, that's going to blow up the deal. So that's just something also to consider. If you have a certain set of buyers and you're only marketing to that email list, probably don't have anything to worry about. But if you're putting it all over social media, sellers sometimes will find out and you'll be like, well, how the hell did they find out? And sometimes it's usually other people, just other investors calling them to try to steal your deal. But in any case, that's going off topic there. But yeah, very basic, 70, 80% of the rule minus repairs. I know some people do minus repairs and then minus their wholesale fee. We don't do that. But I think the big thing for me is like I look at the flip numbers. So like I want to make between 40, $35,000 and $40,000 on a flip. So that's kind of how we try to have our numbers. If we had to close on this, that it's going to be worth our time to take a deal down and renovate it and resell it. So really, I'd like it to be closer to 50 or 60 at this point. Because as you all know, nothing ever works like you planned it to. So.
Other questions? We did have somebody want to see a role play between Joe and Brett, and I'll let you guys decide if you want to do that and who's going to be like the buyer and seller. That would be very interesting. Couple of things that I'll add to this. What Brett said about the 80-20 rule. You should listen 80% of the time, talk 20% of the time. Somebody once told me this, that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk. So for me, that's an easy reminder. And also, Joe says many times, 2 quotes from Joe. People sell to people they like. That's how Brett's able to get these houses for less money than most other people, because they know that Brett's going to close. They trust Brett too. And that's what, and Brett's doing all this over the phone, like I said. So he's building trust in them, or, he's building their trust. And, that's what Brett and Joe both do very well. And also Brett had mentioned time and circumstance. Everybody's probably going to sell eventually. It's just a matter of time or circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
When you're dealing with somebody, just stay in contact with them. It's a long game for you. I mean, life is short, but life is long too. Stay in contact with these people, because over time something could happen. I had an instance, talked to a guy, self-storage facility. He was not going to sell a facility. He had no interest in selling a facility. I'm like, I understand. And then he called me just a few months later and says, hey, Scott, I know I said I'd never sell my facility. I'm thinking about selling it. I said, well, what happened? Well, we found out my wife has cancer and I want to spend all the time I can with her. So that was a circumstance that changed in his life that made him decide that he wanted to sell his facility.
Yeah, Scott, people. So yeah, that's something that too many people make mistakes on, is not allowing or understanding the process or not allowing the process to work. So it's kind of like you can correlate that to marketing. People give up on marketing too soon. Whenever I try a new marketing avenue, I give it at least a year to work. And you have to make sure you can budget. Like rule of thumb with marketing is stick with one thing that you can do for the longest period of time. So the one thing you can afford for the longest period of time, because it'll work. You just don't give it enough time. And kind of the correlated to following up, we have people in our CRM that have been there for years. And we don't even stop if they say no. And here's why. They might get pissed at us. We tell you what, people who've been pissed at us, we bought their homes. And you know, if they told me, thank you for not giving up on me. So you just have to, that rapport and understanding that follow-up sequences is critical. And a lot of your deals, I'll share with you. So one of our guys from Ascend, Brennan Reed is his name. I can't remember what his response rate was, but it was off the chart. So all he did was go back into his CRM. He didn't go buy new data. He didn't go get a whole new marketing list. He just went in his CRM and just marketed to everyone that was already in there. And that's how he's able to do more deals. Is he's just where we miss the ball sometimes on that follow-up. I think he was doing texting, and typical response rate not for texting. Well, texting is illegal now, but it was like, you know, I used to be able to get 20% response rate. Now, but when I quit, it was like less than 5. And I think he was like over 20% response rate on reaching out to these people. And so, yeah, follow-up is huge. Instead of looking for the next deal, the problem is people give up too soon and take a no as a no. A no, here's something else to write down. A no is not a no now. A no might be a no now. That doesn't mean it's a no later. So you can ask that, hey, is that a no now? Or would you consider possibly selling later? So you can ask that question. A lot of times they're going to say, yeah, it's a no now. And you say, okay, great. Well, can I follow up with you? Yes. Okay, now you have permission to follow up. So it makes it even easier.
Another person that's helped me a lot, and I know it's helped a lot of other people on this Zoom, is Chris Voss. If you haven't heard of him, you get a chance, YouTube Chris Voss. He was a Special Forces military, became a negotiator for the FBI, hostage negotiation, and a few other negotiations that he handled. Pretty high level stuff. So you talk about negotiating, you know, the really, really good videos that he put out. Our question too for Joe and for Brett, we're also used to asking closed-end questions. What that means, you ask a question and the answer is either yes or no. That is going to get you to a point with sellers, but you really want to ask open-ended questions. Yep. Open-ended questions are questions that need a response. They need to tell you more information. So, Brett, could you talk about maybe some of the good open-ended questions that you have? And Joe, if you could add in a couple too, open-ended questions that you ask sellers when negotiating with them.
Yeah, mine are incredibly simple. Like sometimes I don't even ask questions. I'll go back to Chris Voss and just mirror them. Okay, well, property needs a lot of work. I'm like, needs a lot of work? Or like, I can't do that. Can't do that. And so like, I want to keep the sellers talking. And that's sometimes the easiest way. I'll say, hey, can you tell me more? So one thing for me is that there's something, typically these open-ended questions are called out when you find some resistance. So when there's some resistance to a call of why a seller doesn't want to open up, there's resistance that's taking place. You might not know what that resistance is. So I'll be like, hey, it seems like I did something wrong. And just shut up. Or it seems like we're not on the same page. Can you help me understand where we are on this call? And so those are the types of questions that I typically ask when I need to be more open-ended, is usually when I'm finding some resistance. Good one is, hey, is it me, the price, or the process? So very, very basic, because for me, I have to be very careful with those conversations on the phone too, because a lot of those conversations I might want to save for the living room, because they could be very emotional conversations, and they're better to have. If, you know, instead of us qualifying over the phone, we send our sales rep now, and he has those conversations at the dining table.
I guess for me, because Brett, obviously, you know, we also want to go at, you know, we're also gearing toward their emotions. I guess. And and there's no real set rules as far as, you know, how to handle, you know, some people have asked, okay, give me every scenario. You can't. You have to do it on the fly, you know. And one of the things that I was taught was feel, felt, found. I know you feel, I felt the same way. Here's what I found out. So what you're doing is emotionally, psychologically, unconsciously, subconsciously, you're getting on, you're showing them that, hey, you know what, I understand now, you know, I you know, feel, I understand how you feel, I felt, so now all of a sudden you're getting on their side. It felt the same way, and here's what I found out, here's what I found. So now you're offering them a solution.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of geared toward that, you know, especially if they're, and no scenario is exactly the same. I just like to, you know, depending on what kind of price they want to get and what the situation is. I know you feel, you know, listen, Mr. Seller, I understand you want to get this price. At the same time, you know, I felt the same way, especially when I was selling my properties. And here's what I found out when other people were trying to come through and try to buy the properties, and they had the exact same situation on my end in regards to the price you're asking. Because, you know, and I'll ask, you know, what have other buyers done? Have you shown this place other people? Because then I also gear it, because if I know it's just myself looking at it, I'll gear questions a little bit differently, versus all of a sudden, if I don't have to compete against everybody else, it's, you know, there's no real set way, you know, that's just a small way that I do it.
Yeah, you can probably look up online, do a quick Google search, like overcoming resistance, sample scripting, like John Martinez. I don't know if it'll come up. There's a lot, like I'm looking at the document now. I don't use a lot of these questions. I'm more kind of like Joe. It might be because like I look at all these questions and it makes me want to throw up. Like, how am I going to ever use all these in every different scenario? And then I'm like, then I lose my confidence. So I keep it very simple and pretty much do the same thing as Joe. I don't call it feel, felt, found, but essentially when the way that we offer, way that I do this when I was negotiating is when you go to make an offer, you're making a presentation, and that's exactly what Joe did. So he's presenting what he what he felt, and what he found. And then it's like, hey, these are everything that I heard. This is what's going on. This is what we can do. And then this is what we can pay. Because of this. So if I can help you with these, maybe this price doesn't make sense for you, but from our discussion, this is where we'd have to be for us to make a little bit of money. Do you think we can do business, or do you think we can move forward? And that anchor, typically when you have an anchor, you can come up, you know, 10 grand, but you want to make sellers feel like they have to work for it so they don't feel like they fell short. But yeah, that I think is critical, is just listen to what a seller has to say and focus on the motivation. And if you're focusing on a win-win and not how much money you're going to make, that'll come more naturally. But if you focus on the deal, if you focus on the close, if you focus on the money, I have fell short at every negotiation where money comes to play. So I try to forget about money. Like, I don't even pay attention to it at all, because I know that gets in my head so much so where it'll steal my confidence sometimes.
Cool. Okay. Let's see. Marty asks, you don't. Oh, go ahead. What was going to say that?
Do you try to avoid any negotiating, like in the qualifying process, and try to just do most, or if not all of it, in the on the appointment?
Yeah, because I'm like, because that qualifying process, I'm really trying to make sure that we're being efficient with our time. And you want to make sure if you're, sometimes sellers are really smart and they might just be fishing for price or fishing for people to take advantage of. And so like, if a seller is rushing me to get a price or rushing me to get an offer, that's typically the case. So I just say, well, hey, this is our process. We'll go right back into script, ignore them. And then at the end of the call, like, you can just ignore someone saying, well, what are you going to pay? I'll say, well, hey, look, I don't even know if we're a good fit yet. Got a couple more questions for you. It's going to take about 5 to 10 more minutes. Is that okay with you? Most of the times it's a yes. And if it's a no, you can say, well, hey, I thought you were open to selling your home. Well, yeah, well, you won't give me an offer, Brett. And I say, well, hey, how can I do that? and shut up, or say, well, hey, I haven't even seen your home. And so really you're stress testing that resistance to your process. And if they're not willing to follow your process, then chances are that they're not going to be the person you can do business with.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there questions over here for Brett? Don't be afraid. We got some shy people on.
Marcy asked, do you don't use text to drip market to your no list question?
We do. Yeah, you can text people that you already have an open conversation with. So this is something that's really important, guys. If you're not registered as a business, you're illegally marketing to people. That might scare some of you, but this is something that's already in the pipeline. It's called there's something called 10DLC, where you have to register your entity to enable to have a business that can operate within the restraints of the cell phone laws or whatever they are. And so you have to have a website, you have to have a phone number, you have to have a business address, you have to have all these things. My CRM helped us through this process. But if you're wondering why you're maybe not getting a hold of sellers, it's probably because your number is getting flagged, or as well already picked up as being flagged as spam. The reason why I'm sharing that with you, because there's certain keywords that even though our business is registered, cell phone carriers are flagging and our texts aren't going through the people that are already in our CRM. Sell and sold, that's one I've just picked up on lately, that those texts aren't going through. So now we have to change the language. Have you moved the property yet? Like, that may sound stupid, but like maybe someone else is better versed in the English language than I am, but that's the best thing that I came up with so far. But yeah, so even if you are texting people, you can't cold outbound text someone, but you can text someone if they're in your system, but you can still get flagged even if you're registered, which the way that this works is it's just a person who's auditing your account, and they can be having a bad day and just screw you over. And so if you get flagged, basically your business is you could be 10 years in business, they can wipe your business clean. You have to start from scratch. So I know that sounds, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but it is something to consider, that if you're not working within those guidelines, you may not have problems, but if you do, they're going to be big problems. And if your text or calls aren't going through, now you know why you're having a low success rate of connecting with sellers.
Now, Brett, not to interrupt you, but I know a guy who was going exactly through that. And the funny thing about it was, let's just say the word sell gets flagged. Instead of putting in SELL, he'll just put SEL. You want to sell.
Thanks. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. So and it worked. It's crazy as it sounds. It didn't get flagged because of the one L. Obviously, you have a misspelled word at the same time. You know, it's getting the text, because we do the exact same thing. We do the voice drop, text messages, the whole thing. So
yeah,
just
it's scary, man. I was using launch control to do our texting, and they were going on months like that's, and they're still operational, and I don't know how they are, because like it is. So this is not a real estate thing. This is a marketing.
Yes.
This is for any industry, car washes, real estate agents, whatever it is. This is for industries across the board. So don't think this is just a real estate thing. So it is a something to definitely take seriously.
Yeah.
The strategies like you're talking about today with negotiating, would they apply to mainly inbound leads rather than outbound leads?
I treat all of them the same.
Okay.
Yeah, there has to be consistency to determine whether or not that process is good or not. Yeah, and it's only changing the intro. So, hey, Mr. Mrs. Looks like you just filled out a form on our website about XYZ property. This call is going to take 5-10 minutes. We're going to ask some questions about the home and see if we're a good fit. At the end of the call, you can let me know what you want to do. And if you feel like we're the best option for you, we'll come out and make you an offer. You know, very simple. If it's a cold call, hey, is this Joe? Yeah, this is Joe. Hey, I know this might be out of the blue. My name is Chris. I'm a local home buyer. We were just in the area. We love the area. We're looking to pick up another property. Have you ever considered selling your home? And so you're just changing the initial intro, which I call setting the stage for what happens next. And this is something else you guys should write down. So sales is heavily psychology based. And so people, for the most part, will say no out of fear of the unknown. So at every step of the way along my process, I'm asking the seller if they understand what we just talked about, what the next step is going to look like, how long it's going to take. Like I'm looking, and I'll do that as many times as I need to. So if I have a call with a seller 3 times and we still haven't been out to see the home, I'm going to end my call the same way every call. Just a heads up. This is what it's going to look like when you see your home. This is what's going to happen, because I want to make sure that something hasn't changed. And if I'm finding resistance at the end of that call to what happens next, then I can call it out and figure out what it is before we come out. So that was a huge one for me. So I'm very intentional about making sure sellers understand what's happening, how it's going to happen, and when it's going to happen.
Is that a question?
Yeah, Seth. Seth, go ahead. If you can unmute and ask your question, that'd be great.
Definitely. Good morning, guys. Brett, what are you doing for Dispo? Is it mostly your buyers list? If you're using Investor Lift, how's that working for you?
I use PropStream to build my buyers list, and I stopped doing it because it's very intensive. And almost like I would almost need to hire like a VA, because essentially what you can do, and I think Investor List might be the same. So essentially, if you guys don't know what PropStream is, it's like a data company. You can acquire, purchase data to market to. You can create filters to figure out like create a list that might be highly motivated. But essentially what you can do is you can pull up a filter for anyone that's purchased a home cash within the last 2 years within a certain range of where you have that home. And so you can locate all the cash buyers. Then you have to skip trace them. So they might have, 4 to 5 numbers or 2 to 5 numbers. You might get, 50 to 200 people. So then you have 200 people that have 5 phone numbers before we could text them. So that's why that process has changed. So we basically rely on the buyers that we have. I got to be honest, I'm very hesitant on posting things on social media now, because we've had plenty of people try to poach our deals and go direct to seller, which just, I mean, yeah, it sucks, but it's the nature of the beast. So we sort of pulled back. But at the end of the day, again, if you have a good process, if you had good rapport, fear isn't a good motivator. So I shouldn't let what other people do determine my next steps. So like if my process is good and I've had a conversation with the seller, and they want to back out, they know what's going to happen if they do, because it's like the first bullet item in our contract. And a lot of times it's easier to let sellers out of a contract because New York really, I mean, tell you what, it's not worth it to pursue anything like that. So that's why you have to have a good process and build that rapport, because at some point deal killers do come up later, and if they don't like you, they'll just kill the deal and you can't do anything about it, it's going to cost you a lot of time, money, and frustration, and probably not be worth it at the end of the day. If you're talking about $1 million deal, then that's different, but we're just talking about single family homes.
Brett, for the people who try to go after your and that happens to all of us. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I do is, I let them know, say, listen, obviously they know you're going to be advertising what you got to do. And one of the things that I let people know is that, hey, you know what? I have had people, as soon as they find out I have a property under contract or are purchasing it, all of a sudden they're and I do it very nicely, but I say, hey, listen, you know what? They're the type of people that are going to go around everybody else, usually not the best types of people to deal with.
Yep.
At the same time, I'm very straightforward, and I'll be very respectful and very honest with you. I'm not that type of person that's going to go around somebody else. I don't do that. And I don't like dealing with those types of people, because I know in the end it makes doing, you know, basically selling the house a lot more difficult. So for me, I kind of preface them ahead of time. Don't work with people who are going to be dishonest enough to go around it, but I say it in a nice way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever do that or not, because if you get poached, if your people are getting, you know, obviously there's dishonest people everywhere. I don't know if you guys have that.
That's a great. Rochester is small, you guys. So, so Rochester's small, but business is business. If we talk to a seller and they're already working with someone, we typically let that take place and say, hey, sounds like you're already working with somebody. I want to confirm, do you have a listing contract? Do you have a contract? Like, I want to know, because I'll say, hey, it's not worth it to me to try to make money off of this if my name is going to get tarnished for people thinking I stabbed them in the back. So I need a contract release, or I need something before we move forward if you decided you wanted to work with me. And that honesty, I mean, last year I closed a contract over in the White Coat Ghetto area, and this guy was already working with someone, and I'm like, dude, I can't help you, man. Like, you got to figure this out. So I was just helping him. And at the end of the day, he's like, Brett, I want to work with you. Like, this guy, I don't know what's going on, but like, all you've done is try to help me. He's like, all you've done is try to help me get this done with this other guy. And then we made sure we got the right information, and we closed it. We made 40 grand. And it was just making sure that we're running an ethical business.
Yep. You put them first.
Yeah.
All right. I know that you know, we stop at 10:30, you know, especially out of respect to our speaker. I'm not sure what his availability is. We're coming up on 10:20 right now. And you know, just a couple, I'm going to say closing statements. Brett, how do people get a hold of you if they want to? I know you're on all social media and stuff like that. So if you could let people know how, if they want to get a hold of you, how they can get a hold of you, that would be great.
Yeah.
And then,
I'll put my email in here. I don't, I gotta tell you, I don't even have Facebook on my phone, and I haven't posted on Instagram in forever. So I'm gonna tell you guys something. Social media does not make you money in real estate. You know what makes you money on social media is selling something, coaching services, information. So if you're wasting your time there, don't pick up a phone, call sellers. So that's my rule of thumb. That was one of the best decisions I ever made, to stop spending time on social media, because there are ways to make money with it, but it's not buying people's homes. Any case, so I'll share my email. I'm pretty responsive via email. I am getting married in a couple weeks, and then we'll be on our honeymoon. So, and I have family coming in town next week. So I'm probably going to be, unless it's business related or urgent, I might not be responding right away. But I'll be back around March, and be happy to answer and share information, whatever you guys might need to take that next step.
cool. And
I'll spell this right.
yeah.
I think that's it. If it doesn't work,
I forgot to there. Okay, great. Yep. There you go. Really easy.
Okay.
It's Brett at Brett buys Rochester.
See me, I'm like, can I read
Rockhouses.com.
Yeah.
Did you spell it right?
Yeah, I think so.
Looks right. Okay, cool. And I forgot to mention that early on. I really appreciate Brett stepping on this morning, and he is getting married, what, a couple weeks, right, Brett?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. And I did forget to mention that. So that's why I really appreciate him jumping on. I know he's got a busy schedule. I'm sure his fiance, future wife, has a ton of things for him to do. I know for a fact she does, and that's why I appreciate him jumping on. Brett, thank you very much for jumping on. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time. Everybody, I hope you got some benefit out of this or learned something. You know, a lot of things that Brett mentioned, you know, you can put them into practice. It's just really simple, you know, treat other people the way you want to be treated. With that, Brett, on a closing statement, just kind of wrap it all up if you can. Joel and I will stay on probably for another 15 minutes, you know, 10, 15 minutes, or at least I know I can. I don't know if Brett can. But Brett, you know, for the people who have to jump off at 10:30, if you just kind of wrap it up, and then let's come up with a book mention, a book that's really helped you move the needle in your negotiating business.
Well,
We'll say.
I think so. There's a book that no one has probably ever heard of. It's called Winning Through Intimidation. A real estate broker wrote it. But when I was struggling with understanding people, and that sellers will always take less money, that was a book that kind of moved the needle for me. And this business, I'll tell you what, I've had so many people let me down or fall short on what, you know, as far as have people want to do deals with me and then back out, and I've got to bring money to the table to get deals done. I've had people stab me in the back. I've had people you know, threaten lawsuits over like clear contracts. And so what that book does is it's a real estate broker who basically shares the psychology of like 3 or 4 different types of people and how to make sure you're protecting yourself so you don't fall into traps and fall into bad situations. So that was a really good book. Don't trust anyone. And if you do, have your attorney give you the sign off on it. That's rule of thumb, all right?
Yeah. It is that trust but verify, that's for sure.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you joining. Joe, you got any last minute comments you want to bring up?
We appreciate you, Brett, being on. It was fantastic. A lot of golden nuggets. And I know especially over there, I think you said you're an hour behind, so you got on at about 7:50 a.m.
Yeah. And I will stand for the next 15 minutes. I just thought of something that would probably be really beneficial to negotiating too. So if you guys want to hop on, it's something that's allowed us to buy properties at steeper discounts, and it just popped in my mind. But thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody else who were able to get on here. Those of you who can stay on, we'll be on for a few more minutes, and Brett can go over a few things, but we appreciate it. Get on the website, definitely check to see, stay up to date with everything going on. Those of you who have to get off, go do real estate. Those of you who can stay on, we'll let Brett go over exactly what he was going to be talking about.
Sweet. All right. Well, before I forget about this, this is something that works really well. And the reason I brought it up, it was just the last comment that I made. Negotiating, if a seller wants something, like, they just don't get something for free, right? So when you're negotiating, there's always give and take in negotiating. And what I mean by that is a seller might be like, hey, bro, I want 150,000. And I'm like, okay, well, what if you clean out the entire home and you can have it in broom clean condition? Can you do that? Because if I have to do it, it's going to cost me $4,000. So if you can't do it, I'm at 130. My numbers, I'm just making up numbers here. My math isn't going to be right. So you're giving a seller options and making them feel like they're winning. Like, if you can make them feel like they have an option to give them more money, they're going to feel really good about it. And most of the time, they don't want. Most of the time, it's not about the money. Most of the time, they take the less dollar amount. So I bought I bought a rental in Fairport last year, where the lady did not like me. She basically kicked me out of her living room, and because my offer was so low, and she wanted like 190 for this place, and I don't know, and we got down to 160. I bought it for 130, and I was only able to do that because she kept wanting more. And she's like, "Hey, can you help me move?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I can." But if I give you $2,000 and I help you move, and then you kill the deal at closing, like, I just lost all this money. Like, I paid for pods and I paid for her moving. And if you don't have the money, bring out a partner to do that. So like I was out like $5,000 out of pocket before we even closed on it. So I said, well, hey, look, I've got to be $5,000 out of pocket before we close on it. What's to say you're not going to kill the deal at closing? Well, I'm not going to do that, Brett. Well, can you guarantee that with 100%? Like, what if you just died the day before closing? Like, what happens? Like, well, it could happen, right? So like you can get a yes out of that. And so I say, hey, well, if I've got to give you $5,000 extra and I'm covering your closing costs and we're helping you move, I need to be at 130. Is that fair? And if they're like, no, then you come up. So that's a great way to negotiate price, is to try to find out ways to add value, because most of these homes are incredibly poor condition. So like a clean out now, man, I freaking did a clean out on my personal house on the exterior and interior, and it cost me almost $15,000. Like that's how bad that house was. So like just imagine if you could put that 15 grand back in the seller's pocket, how happy they'd be here if you'd at least gave them the option to do it. So that's just a perfect example. Like we have a credibility packet which talks about all the things that we can do for a seller. We can help them move. And again, if you don't have the money to do that, try to find a partner who's willing to front that money. You do, or there is a legal way to do it. Joe, I can't remember, you might know it, but you have to get like is it a deed in lieu or something, where like it protects your interest. If they kill the contract, you can foreclose on them. I think that's what it is. So essentially, if you're giving money to a seller prior to title, then like they can just walk away and you've lost all that money. And so there's a document you would need to have an attorney sign. All right, I can't remember what it is. You guys can catch up with me later about that. You would have the seller sign, well, hey, if I'm going to do this, I need to make sure that my interests are protected, because we don't even have title back right now. And I've done that on deals. I've given sellers. So I bought another house in Fairport, my personal residence. I sent them. So sometimes people don't trust you, and I'll be like, well, hey, what if I sent you to my bank tomorrow? I'll give you $2,000 tomorrow. We don't even have title. Are you going to trust me to get this deal done? I will send them to my bank to get cash up front. And that's a gamble sometimes. I've done 5,000, I've done 2,000, but on those deals, I made a lot of money. And the one house that I just mentioned, my personal house in Fairport, well, I have over $100,000 in equity, and on the other one in Fairport, I have $150,000 in equity. And both the sellers, one seller I paid to move down to North Carolina, the other seller I gave $5,000 up front. I paid all their moving costs to get down to North Carolina, and the other seller we paid for their pods, and we paid for the moving company. And so those are things that that can be uncovered with the right sales process. So negotiating, give and take, guys. If the seller wants something, it's not for free. Come back with a counter offer. Hey, if I can get you this, we need to be here. Is that fair? And if it's not, ask them to tell you why. Give them options.
Some great advice. Fantastic.
I can talk
surprised.
for hours, guys. So if you this stuff gets me fired up. Does anybody have any questions on that, or have any comments or anything? I mean, I can stay on for another 10 minutes or so. Just want to make sure that for those of you who are still on, that I can add some extra value here.
Have you had a deal killed because you agreed on a price or whatever with husband or wife, and then they come back at you like, oh, actually, my wife doesn't like that or something, or my husband doesn't like that?
Oh yeah, all the time, man. We just had a guy kill a deal on us, and I was on the third call where he had mentioned his wife. And what happened was, I forgot to ask a question on my script. So I went back and rewrote it, but so those are called decision makers. So we cannot get a deal done without all the decision makers present. So you can say, hey, Mr. Seller, I'd love to buy your home, but it sounds like all the decision makers aren't on board. I'm going to have to call it a no. But if you want to work with me or see what we can do to pay for your home, how can we get all the decision makers in a room or get them on a call? So that's one thing that can kill a deal. Friends, family, husband and wife. But I just added, where did I add on here? So like on my motivation, I have a price. Aside from price, meaning the price is usually easiest. The price is always the easiest part. Is there anything you can think of that would get in the way of this sale? Like, what if you sold your home today and Joe Schmo got mad? Was there a Joe Schmo that would get mad at you? Would your wife get mad at you? See, if they don't answer, you kind of like role play. There's anyone who's going to get mad at you, but they might say, well, I own the property, because that's what we get a lot, right? I own the property. It's in my name. Okay, well, are you married? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, when can we get your wife on the phone? So like you really have to work, and you might not be able to get the person on that phone, but going into the contract, you just have to be aware that that could kill the deal. So you have to say, hey, Mr. Seller, like, look, it sounds like you said you're married. Sounds like your wife doesn't have any part in the sale. Well, let's just say we get to the closing and she's mad at what's going on. Well, what are we going to do? Because if we're at the finish line and you don't close on it, like, we're going to protect our interests and put a lien on your property. Do you understand that? And that's not because I want to do it, but at this point, we've got time and money invested. We've already paid for the attorney. We've already paid for title. We've got the money set aside. Our partners are waiting to close on this. Our contractors are ready to get working on the property. Like, we're, tens of $1,000s already out of pocket right now. And so they need to know what's going to happen if for some reason they do decide to bail at closing. And it's not a threat. It's just, it is what it is, because you're giving them the option to address the deal killer. And you can say, well, hey, we had this conversation already. We talked about it. And you said she wasn't part of it. We agreed on it. Now I'm expecting you to hold your end of the bargain.
I just had kind of something with that happen on both ends. I had, I sent out like 19 letters to a small town in Wayne County, and one of them actually hit. And the gentleman was talking to me, and he was very interested in showing us the property. And he said, I have to talk to my wife about it and see what she thinks. And then I didn't hear back from him for like 3 days. And so I was about to give up, and he came back to me and he said, oh, I'm sorry, my phone broke. So this whole 3 days, I was like, you know what he did? He talked to his wife, and his wife said no. And then I sent out another round of letters. And one of the properties was out by the Swilberg area. And the lady said that her husband had passed away, and that he had multiple rental properties. And because he passed away and everything was in her name, she's interested in selling multiple properties. So it was kind of cool learning that having another person that's not there or that's supposed to be involved can really change a deal.
Yeah, because you can get friends and family that like they'll have a conversation with their neighbor, like, I'm selling my home to Brett for this, and they'll be like, I can give you more, but sell it to me. And then once that seed is planted, like, it's game over. It could be a family member, it could be a friend. It's not game over, but you've got to have that rapport and the transparency up front in order to deal with that. Hey, Joe, we signed an agreement already. Remember, another thing is, like, my friend Josh uses this a lot. He's like, hey, just so you know, if your Uncle Billy comes around and offers you $100,000 more, you can't take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have an agreement. And if there was a better option, you'd probably be working with them right now, right? Am I correct in making that assumption? So you have to really address those and can make a confirmation that there really isn't any other option but you. If there was, they'd be talking to somebody else.
I just had one. Am I on?
Yeah, you're good, Mary.
Oh, hi, yeah. I just had one. Joe, you were with me on this, and I knew that the husband was in the wings. They were going through a divorce, and I kind of shelved that. I, knew how to handle that piece of it and knew that that could kill it. But she was determined. She said, I'm meeting with my financial person to go over my financials. And so she said, can we get on the phone with that person? I'm going to sell this house. It wasn't under contract yet, but she was, leaning totally that direction. And it turns out her financial person is like this, took control of the conversation. And she was a real estate agent. She was a broker. And she's like, oh no, we're going to put this on the market and we're going to sell it. So it was very interesting. And I had asked her who else, in the beginning conversations, who else is on this, who else makes the decisions? And, we'd worked with her on her why and all that. So, but it was very interesting that she didn't even know that this person had that much influence over her, I guess. And so I'd love your questions. Like, is there anybody else that you think has some influence in your life or advises you, or helps you make decisions? How you phrase all those things, I think brings that out. So thank you.
Sellers are all liars. you like for real, they might not intentionally be lying, but they might be omitting important information that makes them a liar. They might not think it's a lie. So like if you have to kind of understand that, otherwise it's difficult to like sometimes get through all these questions because they're like, man, this takes too long, or this is a lot of questions, or these sellers aren't going to listen to me, or I don't want to do this. It's like, you have to, because like, if you don't, then you're not going to get a confirmation or get that commitment. Yes, that yes could be counterfeit. And so, yeah, that's I absolutely hate when attorneys or like other family members get on. I enjoy those conversations now because I give them a hard time and I think it's fun. But you can really like, I would be like, hey, Mrs. like real estate agent, like, hey, this seller wasn't really interested in working together with me. I'm really confused at what's going on this phone call. Like, it sounds like you're taking advantage of this situation and cutting me out of the deal. Is that what you're doing? Because for my conversation, the seller thought I was the best fit. Like, it might not work out in your favor, but if you can practice having difficult conversations like that, it goes a long way to have like every bad conversation you can turn into a good conversation and use it to like dig deeper with questions. And they might offend the person, but the truth typically offends people, and that's okay. You can call it out and be like, hey, we were almost ready to put pen to pad. And now it seems like you're taking control over this conversation. Like, help me understand what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, she was a broker and I was not, in this case. And so she knew better.
Well, and then be careful too, because if you can agree like on a price in a text, or we record all our calls or a call recording, like that's close enough to a contract where you could take legal action. Not that you would, but you could say, well, hey, I already have a verbal agreement, which from what my attorney said is already enough to hold up in court. So you can that's not that's just a fact. It's not a threat, right? It's a fact. They might take it as a threat, but you can say, well, hey, well, what do we do from here? I already got a price with the seller. We've already been working on this for weeks. And now I don't want to assume, but it seems like you're taking this away from me. So like, should I call my attorney? Can I have my attorney reach out to your attorney? That might get a broker fired up, but that's the business part of this that sometimes is very difficult. You're not doing anything wrong. You're well within your rights to say those things.
It's great. That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Brett, one of the things that I'll do too, in regards, especially to family members, I say it in a very nice way. I say, I understand you want to sell to family members. Just make sure you don't put yourself in a situation, because sometimes when you do things within the family, it makes Thanksgiving dinners kind of awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, selling to family. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I say, well, how many, that's a really good point, because you probably have experienced the same. I'll be like, I'll ask the seller, who do we typically do business with? And they'll be like, well, I don't know. I was like, well, hey, it's people who work with friends and family. We're typically buying their homes because they don't perform, and that's who we try to do business with. So
that's great.
Wish you the best. Because when it doesn't happen, we'll see if we can figure something out. But we're buying, X, Y, and Z properties every month. I can't tell you if we'll have the money to buy your home when you're ready to sell, but we'd love to have that conversation with you to see if we can make it work. And that's a takeaway, right there. Yeah, agents. I hate real estate agents. I like maybe 0.0001% of them.
Well, that real estate agent Marcy was talking to, I was on the phone with her, and so it just went. She basically almost doubled the price of the property, and just wanted to do the minimums to make the maximum.
Didn't even see it coming. Didn't see it coming.
Yeah, but it was okay. It was just being unrealistic, selling it with a tenant at an owner occupied price.
Yeah,
and you get to the point where it's just like, you knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, but you kind of leave it. Hey, listen, if things change, let us know, and, but I went over the numbers with her, and we were correct on her numbers, but you get to the point where it's just like, it doesn't matter, because, she's there with her client and she needs to prove herself right. okay, you know, do what you got to do.
So
I told him just follow up with him.
And I'll know if there's a real estate agent on here, I'm sorry if I offended to you, but the one thing that gets us frustrated is we're 100% transparent that we might not be the best fit for you. Real estate agents sell pipe dreams. So I would say, well, hey, if your real estate agent thinks this is such a great deal, why isn't she putting the money up to buy your home? So just think about that. Like, you got to plant those seeds. That's what's really frustrating when an agent comes into play, is because they can't confidently give a seller an answer. And I'll be like, well, hey, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen from here to the finish line. And sometimes that's more valuable to people than sometimes it isn't. But what I dislike is that, you know, most agents don't come with data. They just sell on emotion. Now, we obviously sell on emotions too, but it comes with full transparency that, hey, if you have a better option, please take it. In fact, I just referred someone yesterday to a real estate agent that wasn't the best fit, but we'll say that. So sometimes those are really difficult conversations to navigate.
You know, like with Marcy, it was because they were both out of state. I think they were in Connecticut or something like that. You know,
Georgia.
Georgia, yeah. And then I was very nicely, I told her the amount of deals that I do per year. And then I think that kind of registered her, oh, okay, this guy really knows what he's talking about, versus she doesn't know who I am. There's no edification whatsoever, because we didn't know she was going to be on there anyways. And sometimes you get to the point where it's just like, okay, you know, and I just told Marcy, follow up with it, watch, see what happens with the property. Yeah. And you know, don't just discard it, but don't just focus on it. Move on to something else at the same time.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you always have to follow up, because a lot of times sellers will be like, we're going to list it, and they never do. Like, we finally had a seller today that listed a property, and it's been 2 years that they've been wanting to sell it. They try to sell it to other investors. They try to sell it on Zillow, and finally it looks like it was listed today, but we never gave up on that. So we don't give up on a property until we see it's on public record that it's sold. So just remember, if you get a no and disqualify a seller as a no, and you move a no to whatever your no bucket is on your spreadsheet or your Excel form, that doesn't mean you don't follow up with them. Like, we have because that's a soft no. A no is a, like, F you, like, leave me the F alone. That's a no. Everything else is a soft no. And I made a mistake to not follow up with the no's, and that's one thing that we started implementing last year. So we have dead leads that we just revived just recently. So that's something to keep in mind too. And Joe, you brought up a good point. Like, a lot of the time, if you're new in this and you're working with a seller who has doubts on your credibility, borrow somebody else's credibility. Call Joe. Like, you don't have to call me, but Joe's there. Like, whoever you call Scott. Borrow their credibility. That's an opportunity. I think the biggest mistake I see people getting started is they don't want to give up money in a deal. Like, for like, Joe's time isn't free, my time isn't free. Joe probably has more. Some people have more of a luxury to give that time away for free. Unfortunately, I don't right now. And we did joint venture deals, but I watch deals fall apart just because people are so prideful they don't want to give up equity just to get a deal on. So that's like your payment to school. Like, why make nothing when you can make something and learn from somebody who's doing what you already want to do?
Yep, I agree. I agree with that. By the way, how are we doing on time anyways?
Yeah, I gotta go.
We are banging up
Thank you.
10:47. I'm gonna sign off. Anybody wants to stay on, Ken. Brett, thanks again for joining. I know you got the wedding coming up. Very proud of you for everything you've accomplished. You've been a big help to me in my life personally, more than professionally, honestly. But thanks everybody for joining. And like Joe says, go do real estate. I'm out. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.